Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to another edition of the Chop Shop with my good friend Mark Schlereth. Trey Wingo here as we get set to preview what I still believe is the greatest weekend in the NFL in the entire season. That is the divisional round. And Mark, I know that a lot of people were excited about 3 wildcard games on Saturday and 3 wildcard games on Sunday, and it's true volume, but these are the best teams, right? I think the divisional round in years past where both teams that got the bye, now only one team gets the bye. So I think when you get to the divisional round, we've eliminated the 7 seeds. And I think the teams that are actually playing their best are all on display this weekend.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. And this is, like you said, it's the best teams. It's the teams that have earned their right to be here through a regular season that actually matters. It's not like the NBA season that we're watching right now where you don't have to show up for a while and you're still going to get into the playoffs. It's through the regular season that actually matters. And then what they did last week, or if they were fortunate enough to be the one team, either Green Bay or Kansas City, that got the bye, they earned that bye. And that, I tell you what, again, moving it to 7 teams, which, I'm always against things initially, here we go again. But it turned out really well. It made the regular season relevant. I'm calling a game between the Carolina Panthers and the Saints on week 17. And the Saints have to handle their business because there's still a mathematical chance of them being the number 1 overall seed. Like that mattered. And it made week 17 that much more interesting this year. So I'm in with you. I love this divisional round.
Yeah, it is great. And before we start breaking down the games, we have to discuss why I chose the photo I chose to make sure people tuned into this divisional round preview. I have an inordinate amount of ridiculous photos of you over the years and all the stupid shit that we did together. And I thought, what better way to get people to say, what the hell is that they're doing, to put some of those up there. So today I put one up where it looks like you're auditioning for the mascot of the San Diego Padres. You have you're bald on top with the Friar Tuck haircut around. And that was from an episode of NFL Live with you, me, and Herm, where you remember Tebow was the rookie, was playing his rookie season for the Broncos, and they gave him that rookie haircut, right? And that's what it looked like. So the art department at that time at ESPN, the graphics department, did a photo of the 3 of us, what we would look like with the Tebow haircut. And amazingly, you still looked handsome. The other 2 of us, Herm and I, look like aliens. You somehow still look handsome. So that was why that photo was chosen.
That made me laugh so hard because I remember the NFL Live that we did that and all the stupid things we used to do on NFL Live, which was so much fun. But it was funny, all the people that reached out to me on Twitter was like, when did you do that to your hair? Like, what year was that? I don't remember that. And I'm like, come on, hey, you know what? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I did not do that to this glorious mop on top of my head.
Yeah, got us a live one there. Yeah, by the way, don't ever, because you still take the hat off just for a second. So
I still have
50
inventory.
plus going strong. Like my power alleys in left and right center field are growing on a daily basis. But you and Golick are the most follically advanced people in the 50s that I've ever come across. So good job for both of you. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about. And I got to tell you, the first game on Saturday, I think is, because it's always the matchup within the matchup, right, that is most interesting. And I think what's going to happen at Lambeau between the Packers and the Rams is so interesting on so many levels. First of all, you have Aaron Rodgers, and I think he's going to be the MVP this year. By the way, I looked this up. He's the first guy in the last 10 seasons to lead the league outright in touchdown passes, 48. And passer rating, which we all agree is a silly metric, but it is a metric. He was number 1, I think 126.9, I think it was. He's the first guy to lead in each of those categories in the last 10 seasons. The last 6 guys that did it, however, either went on to win the MVP or the Super Bowl, but not both. So I'm sure if a Packer fan is here, they're like, I'll take the Super Bowl instead of the MVP. So you have this incredible offense going up against this incredible defense. And yes, the Rams are banged up and they're nicked up and they gutted out a huge win over Seattle. But this is what makes for compelling, like, styles draw fights, right? And the way the Rams are going to want to win and the way the Packers are going to want to win are completely different ways.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. The Rams were one of the most impressive teams that I watched on Wild Card Weekend, just because of the way they dominated both lines of scrimmage, both offensively, the way that Cam Akers ran the football, that wide zone style. And I've said this forever about the Rams in general and Sean McVay. Everybody said, last year when they didn't play well, or the year before after they went on that Super Bowl run, and people are like, well, people have caught up to Sean McVay. I'm like, no, they lost, 2/5 or 3/5 of their offensive line. That was a problem. Sean McVay is a spread offense. It's a power run offense that's disguised as a spread. The illusion of spread, right? That's what he is. At his heart, he wants to be a one-back, wide zone stretch football team that pounds it down your gullet. They did that to Seattle. They dominated a line of scrimmage. And then defensively, we know what they are when Aaron Donald is right. I mean, he's the best player in football. And they were absolutely dominant. So it'll be interesting to me to see how Green Bay handles it without Bakhtiari. And they've had a great offensive line this year. They've done a really good job, but you're really going to have to do a great game plan aspect of how to keep Aaron Rodgers upright. And I think one of the things, it was interesting this year, just talking to coaches and talking to Matt LaFleur and some other coaches, it's also the scheme stuff, Trey, is important. But how can we, if we're going to throw it 35 times, and this was really intriguing to me, if we're going to throw it 35 times, how can we take 12 plays off of his plate? So, like you go to the barbecue, right? And you load up your plate. If you got that cheap paper plate, it falls over the top. It's how can we eliminate that happening to our quarterback? So can we give him 12 easy answers during the course of the game so that he didn't even have to think? It's just an easy completion. Let's move the chains. Let's do these things and take some of that off of Aaron Rodgers' plate. That's going to be important against this Rams defense and this defensive line that is absolutely dominant.
All right, you mentioned something that I think a lot of fans aren't focusing on, but probably should. Bakhtiari's out of this game. They tried to get Veld here, who was on the Colts roster, actually, to play and come in, but he can't play either because of COVID. So the question becomes, obviously, the Packers knew this was a problem. They went out and got somebody right away to try and help with that system, and now that player is not going to be available to them either. So from your perspective, what the Packers did in response to Bakhtiari, and now that he's not, and now that Answer Velder isn't able to be there, how much of a problem do they think it's going to be?
Well, I think they understand what a problem it is, and they're fortunate for them. They've got a guy like Billy Turner who, like when he was in Miami, even here in Denver, when he was here in Denver, he was a guy that struggled, came from a small school, North Dakota State. It took him a while to develop, but he's developed into a really good player and one of the most versatile players in football, Trey. I mean, he's a right guard, right tackle. He'll move over to left tackle. I mean, he's a guy that does a lot of things. But the bottom line is when you play against a guy like Aaron Donald, you have to essentially create all your protections to take care of him. So everything that you do starts with, how do we find 99? Where's he located at? And what's our plan to neutralize 99? And you can do that not only by sliding protections or lining up tight ends or using running backs, but more importantly, Trey, and this is what people lose sight of. More importantly, it's about how your head coach or how your play caller calls the game. How many times can we be aggressive? How many times can we fool him? And how many times can we get him to do something like rush the passer and then trap his ass, right? And essentially slow him down and make him think. Because if Aaron Donald doesn't have to think, if he can just line up and say, I'm hell-bent for election, I don't care who you are. There's nobody in the world that can block him. It just is impossible. I get people say, hey, in your prime versus him in his prime, who'd win? I said, me in my prime, because he was 2 years old. Now, if we're like, I had to whip his ass. He's a toddler, for crying out loud. But if we were both in our primes, could I hold up? Absolutely. If I had a great play caller and we had a great scheme. If I have to block him 35 times, he's going to kill me. I mean, he's just that dominant player.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that's something to watch in this game that a lot of people aren't looking for. So if you see suddenly a lot of pressure coming in, understand that it's the problem at left tackle that the Packers tried to solve, and their solution also became a problem for them.
Yeah.
So that's like the micro. The macro then is you have the Packers offense, which is number one in scoring, against the Rams defense, which is number one in scoring, but it's also number one in total defense and number one in passing. And that's what gets me, Mark, to I think the most critical matchup in this game. How many times is Jalen Ramsey going to be on Davante Adams? Because Davante Adams was one of the, if not the best receiver in football this entire season. I know you'll hear Stephon Diggs and some other people, and you get it, but Davante Adams is to use a term that you were very familiar with and got me familiar with all those years, he's the actuator of that offense, right? When they need to make the play, Aaron Rodgers looks for Davante Adams. So Jalen Ramsey's probably going to be locked up on him a lot. Just so people understand Jalen Ramsey and the season he's had this year as a corner. Against Allen Robinson, who had an unbelievable season this year for the Bears. Week 5, 0 catches. 1 catch, for 42 yards. Mike Evans against Jalen Ramsey, 4 catches for 40 yards. D-Hop in a couple of games, week 13 and week 17, 5 catches, 48 yards. DK Metcalf in 3 games with Jalen Ramsey on him, 4 catches, 44 yards. That is the definition of a lockdown corner, which I didn't think existed anymore in the NFL. So explain to everybody listening how you think the Packers are going to try and avoid that and how the Rams are going to try and exploit that.
Well, I mean, obviously the Rams, will try to line him up as often as they can. Even with all that said, Trey, you're going to catch occasionally when they're going to be in some type of zone coverage, and you're going to be able to, get Davante Adams free. Let's say it's, if it's a 65 play game, probably 50, 51, 52 times he'll be lined up. He'll be playing some sort of man on Davante Adams. So when you get into those situations and they're in man, one of the things that teams do is they condense formations, they get into bunch formations. And so they're essentially running some type of pick routes, some type of rub routes to be able to try to, to be able to exploit that. Or they'll line up in a condensed formation, a nasty on one side, a close on the other, and they're going to run a bunch of crossers, in the middle of the football field to see if they can't get those one-on-ones to where you have to bubble over the top of another defensive back and another receiver. So those are some of the things, the tricks of the trade they use to do, or they try to do to create more favorable matchups in man-to-man coverage. But that's going to be a great matchup. And, having talked to Aaron Rodgers about Davante Adams, he said he's one of the smartest players that he's ever played with at the receiver position. And he does things in the running game where he'll block a guy, and he'll say, hey, man, I've got this guy set up for a double move. If we're running, if we can run some type of inside release stock block where I cross the football field. So like he talks to Aaron all the time, not like, hey, get me the ball. He'll talk to Aaron like, hey, man, I'm setting this dude up. So let's get to, at some point, that boot keep throwback play where I come up there and fake a stock block and then I release on a, on the opposite side and you throw it across the football field. Like stuff like that he's exceptionally gifted at understanding wise. And so it'll be interesting to see exactly how that pans out. But I will tell you this, to me, it really comes down to the other guys. How good are the other guys? Because that matchup is a premier matchup. And how good are the other guys to me on first and second down? Because first and second down, a lot of quarterbacks in this league, first and second down, they're attacking coverage schemes. They're attacking the scheme. Third down, you're attacking a matchup. Who's my best matchup? I'm going to go to that guy. So on first and second down, it'll be really interesting to see how the other guys in that system, really how they produce. I think that's what I'll be looking for. And if they can be in second down and 4-, the Green Bay Packers are unstoppable in those situations because they can run the ball. They are very multiple in what they do and the way they attack you.
Yeah, and looking at this game, I think it's one of those classic examples where I don't want to know what the strength is. I want to know how strong the weakness is, right? The weakness of the Rams this year, which is so weird, 2 years removed from them being a video game offense, is their offense. And the weakness for the Packers, who last year had an unbelievable defense, is their defense this year. It just shows you how fluid things are in the NFL. So that leads us to the real question mark in this game is, do the Rams have a competent, capable, and healthy enough quarterback to pull off the upset? Now, you could make the argument they were able to do it with a little of John Wolford and a lot of Jared Goff with a broken thumb against a very good Seahawks team on the road and an MVP type candidate across the way in Russell Wilson. This is a different dynamic now. They've played. They've got a team that's rested in Green Bay. So do you think the Rams, with their offense as it's presently constructed, more at quarterback than anywhere else, can come up with enough offense to sneak out of there with a win?
I do. And a lot of that is because exactly what you said. Mike Pettine's defense has not been great this year. They have lacked some premier edge pass rush from the Smith brothers, although Za'Darius has been really good, but Preston has had a down year. They're inside guys. I think Clark is a really good player, but I think they're, I don't think they're a super gifted team when it comes to rushing the passer. I'll tell you the thing that was the big weakness for them was the linebacking core, Trey. And if you go back and study their film, man, I can't tell you how many times they're lined up to base with either nickel or dime. They've got sometimes you're playing base and they've got 6 DBs on the football field. And that is going to be an invitation for Sean McVay to basically just say, man, we are going to pound this rock. We're going to throw it down your throats. And so that to me is the big difference. And I've seen, from a gap assignment standpoint, from a linebacker placement standpoint, and a lack of read. They've had a guy that was formerly an outside will linebacker playing middle linebacker. They've got a couple of rookies playing in there as well. That's been the weakness when I studied them earlier this season when I had a Green Bay game. That was the thing that really concerned me. And Mike Pettin is just going to be like, I'll play dime to base because I'm going to try to get my best 11. Whoever's playing best right now, I'll get my best 11 on the football field and we'll live with it. And he's the first coach, and I love this about Mike. He's the first coach that's ever said this to me. Because everybody gives you a line of bullshit, right? Everybody says, hey, got to stop the run. And we got to, he said, listen, man, this league is about throwing the football. He goes, I'm going to let you run. That's a death by 1,000 paper cuts. I got to stop the pass. I got to stop the big play. I got to stop the explosive pass. So he's the first guy that's ever said, the truth of the matter is, if you're averaging 4 yards a carry, good. Because our quarterback is so freaking good, we're going to beat your ass, right? It's like, I got to stop the explosive passing game. So that's where they are right now. And that part gives me, gives me a little bit of an advantage to Green Bay, because that's kind of his philosophical approach to how they're going to run this defense.
All right. So with all that said and done, who do you think wins the game?
I think it's going to be a tight game, man. I really do. I think Green Bay will win it. I think Aaron's playing that good. I think Tanyan, the tight end, is really good. I think their running backs catch the ball exceptionally well out of the backfield. They've got enough weapons outside of Adams. to be with Scanlon and those guys. They've got enough weapons to control the ball on first and second down. I think they win it.
Yeah, listen, the Packers, a lot of people are looking at the Packers like the 2011 Packers that had the number 1 seed. They had the bye, and then they rested and then lost that game to the Giants, where Rodgers was off in that game. He absolutely was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that happening again. I think he knows what's at stake here at his advanced age relative to some other people in the NFC, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Right.
But I think I'm going with the Packers to find a way to get in a very close game. I think they will find a way to win. And that leads us to what I think is maybe the most fascinating game of the entire weekend. And that's the game Saturday night in Buffalo, as the Ravens come to town, having taken care of the Titans, taking on the Buffalo Bills. Now, the weather forecast for this game in Buffalo is kind of all over the place right now. They're calling for potentially snow, potentially rain. And I think that can't be overstated in this game because, look, the Ravens are who they are. They're going to do the thing, which is run the football in a myriad of ways and use Lamar Jackson as one of those weapons to get full 11-on-11 football as opposed to 11-on-10 when the quarterback is taken out of the equation. The Buffalo Bills are not a great running team, and they are the Josh Allen show right now. I mean, Josh Allen's probably not only their best passer, obviously, he's probably their best runner, So if it's sloppy, and it has the potential to be sloppy, I think that's a huge advantage for Baltimore. Yeah,
I'm with you, man. I tell you what, I've been following this offense. I've had a couple of Baltimore games over the last couple of years. John Harbaugh is a guy that I connect with on occasion, through text and through calls. And he's fascinating to me, man. I mean, I had this long conversation about the decision to draft Lamar.
Yep.
And John had to sign off on it. And John said, yeah, let's do it. And then as they transitioned from Joe Flacco to Lamar, they were like, John Harbaugh said, man, the one thing I had to do is I had to get my offensive coordinator, my defensive coordinator to sit down and say, we're going to totally revamp what we do. We're going to make it complementary to running a college kind of style offense, if you will. And so they put it together. And Lamar, if you've ever been around Lamar, he's a great kid.
Absolutely.
And he's got great football acumen, man. He understands what this offense is. and they have built this complementary football team and the way they run the ball. And John was interesting because he told me, he goes, listen, man, a new passing concept hasn't been created in this league in 20 years. Everybody runs the same. You may call it something different, but it's all the same shit. Everybody runs curl flat. Everybody runs flat slant. We all run the same stuff, right? And ultimately, he's like, we have got plays stacked one upon another that we haven't even released yet in our running game. And that true, as you mentioned, that 11-on-11 running style, but it's even better than that because they'll do a quick short motion and if you cut the football field in half consistently, one of the things they do, Trey, is they'll run a motion with the receiver and then they'll take a tight end or their fullback. Their fullback is Ricard. I think he's like 6'4". I think he's 406 pounds.
407 actually. 407.
Yeah, and he runs like a 4.40. So and they'll quickly move him across the formation. So now all of a sudden you've got your tailback leading, you got your fullback leading, you got a receiver over there leading, and your quarterback is running the football. And so if you split the field in half, you're getting 7-on-5 matchups. Like you're getting 7 guys versus 5 guys to defend it. And they're exceptional that way. And then Wink Martindale, their defense coordinator, they have built that team from the back forward. And back in my day, it was always build your front 7 and whoever plays corner and whoever plays safety. It's not that way anymore. They've got 3 legit cover corners, and they're not afraid to expose those guys on an island at all times. And they're going to be aggressive. One thing about Wink Martindale is he'll empty the bucket. He'll be driving home after game, and whatever happens, but he'll know I was aggressive, and if we lost, I lost, throwing the kitchen sink at him, and if we win throwing the kitchen sink at him. So that's who they are. They rely on creating turnovers. They rely on running the football, shortening the clock, taking away. To me, it's the average game is 12 to 13 possessions. They're going to shorten the game down to 8 possessions and make you feel like, oh shit, I got to score every time. And they're going to jump a route. Marcus Peters is the king of jumping routes, and he'll give up 3 or 4 big plays, but he'll get a pick 6 along the way, and the rest is history. I really like the way the Ravens set up in this particular game, and I'm with you 100% on just the weather and the elements when it comes to the Buffalo Bills, because this is not hey, let's play smash mouth. This is let's spread you out 3-by-2 formations, and we're going to throw it every down.
Yeah, and the other thing too, like the problem for the Bills in this, it was a couple years ago in his MVP season where Lamar absolutely embarrassed Matt Milano, who is a really good linebacker in the NFL, but he absolutely made him look like he was on ice skates when he went by him. And that's the problem for Buffalo in this game, because it's not just they're going to have to, like, the play that changed to me, that changed the Titans game completely, was that 48-yard touchdown run off a scheduled pass where suddenly Lamar looked up and said, okay, there's nobody open, but everybody's got their back turned. I'm better than anybody else that's going to try and catch me. And that play, I think, completely changed the game. And I think that's going to be a hard thing for Buffalo to handle.
Yeah, there's the off-schedule stuff, no question. Even the schedule stuff, because it's discipline in the run game, Trey. And there's a bunch of different ways to defend the RPO stuff and the option stuff. And most of it's bullshit, most of it's great. Most of it's great. And like, I always hear guys talking about, hey, keep your shoulders square. We're going to run the surf technique, and the defensive end, last man, last scrimmage, you're going to surf technique. So what you're going to do is keep your shoulders square. If he hands the ball off, knife in there and tackle the fullback. If he doesn't, surf out. And like, you're going to surf out, shuffling your feet side to side and catch Lamar Jackson on the edge. Good luck with that. I hope it works out for you. There's no human on the planet that could do that. And then they get to, okay, we're going to dive guy is going to be taken by the defensive end. You just crash and take the dive guy regardless. And then we're going to fold the linebacker over the top. Now the linebacker gets flying out to the edge, because he's so worried about the edge. And then Lamar cuts inside. I'm sorry, there's no linebacker in the world that can cut back and athletically move with Lamar. So there's a bunch of different techniques, not a bunch, but there's 3 or 4 different techniques that people coach. And like I said, it's like the spy technique, when you say, hey, we're going to spy Lamar, in the passing. Yeah. Good luck
with that.
Nobody has ever had success spying somebody. It's another bullshit technique.
Yeah. Okay. And it sounds like we're both leaning towards a Ravens upset here, which would be technically an upset because it's five versus two. But let's make the case now. Okay. Assuming the weather is part of the problem, what does Josh Allen have to do to make sure? Listen, we've been a prolific scoring offense. I've been as good as possible through the air this year, top 3 MVP candidate. What does he have to do to make sure? Because we know what the Ravens are going to do. Okay, there's
Right.
like you said, they're not trying to fool anybody. This is who we are. This is what we're going to do. How does Josh keep their offense on schedule?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think that one, you attack the middle of the field. You attack with Knox, the tight end. You attack with Beasley inside because you're going to get favorable matchups. And Beasley is one of those guys, like we talked about with Devontae Adams, that sees the game like a quarterback. So he and Josh Allen are completely connected when it comes to the option routes because there is no designed route. Yeah, and this is Brian Dable talking to me a couple of weeks ago. We really don't have a designed route for Cole Beasley. Cole Beasley runs whatever he decides to run based on the leverage of the defensive player that tries to pick him up. Right. And he and Josh see it so, they're identical in the way they see it. And so those two guys to me are the difference makers. Outside, listen, I know Stephon Diggs has been great and he'll probably catch, quite a few balls. You're going to have to be really good out there. But they will gamble out there and they can create turnovers out there. I think it's the middle of football field between the hashes. And I think it's Knox the tight end. And I think it's Cole Beasley. If you stay on schedule and then you give yourself an opportunity to be in third down and short where everything is open to you, where you can run the ball, where Josh Allen can be effective running the ball, and you still have that middle of the field open passing. I think that's where the Buffalo Bills can excel. And I will tell you, I think they're a really good and complete football team. I think defensively, White is a phenomenal corner, phenomenal lockdown corner, and they are able to rotate and roll coverage away from whoever he's covering. And I think that part's an advantage, but I really think it's the middle of the football field. And I think Cole Beasley is going to be huge.
All right. So all that being said, where are you pulling the trigger?
I just like the Ravens. I like the matchup. I like the aggressiveness. And I just think what they do, especially if you haven't seen a lot, is just really hard to prepare for in a week. And you can play a tight game, you can play a close game, but I just believe in the end, they're just a tough out. So I'm going to take the Ravens on this one.
Yeah. And this, I think, is the first time we'll see under this new playoff format the disadvantage of being the 2 seed, right? Because normally you're the one of the two, you get the bye. So the other team has to play that extra week and they get a little banged up. They had to play a really tough game against the Indianapolis Colts and survive by 3 points. So being the 2 seed really doesn't mean much anymore. And Baltimore comes in on fire. I mean, the last 4 games of the regular season, Lamar was playing statistically better than he was during his MVP season. I think the Ravens are the hot team right now. I'm taking the Ravens as well. More importantly, has Quinn made her picks yet? Your granddaughter?
She did. She took the Ravens.
Okay, so now I feel better about it. Like
yes,
I thought, like you and I are just being stupid. But if Quinn is with the Ravens, then who can be against them? So
yes, exactly.
We're both.
She's all about the bird.
Okay, we're all in on the Ravens then, and then it leads us to Sunday's games and the great curiosity of Kansas City, because I said this from the start of the season, and I still believe it. I think they're the best, most complete team in football. But for 6, 7, 8 weeks, Mark, they've been basically like a kid playing with their dinner. Maybe I'll eat the peas. Maybe I'll eat these mashed potatoes. And it's either going to be the greatest trick of all time or the greatest setup for failure of all time. Because before they lost that last game, the last game of the regular season, which they didn't care about, didn't mean anything to them, they had won 6 straight games by 6 points or less. Here's the entire list of times that has happened in the NFL before now. Never! That had never happened, okay? They would get up 30-10 on Miami. Find a way to get a squeaky win. They'd be up 14 on New Orleans and the Saints and find a way to win by 4. I think they got bored. And you know this as well as anyone because you were on a team that had to repeat as champions. And the mental fatigue, I think, was more real than the physical fatigue, correct?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. And it's one of the reasons, that I think, and Andy Reid is such a great coach, But it's one of the reasons I think every week you see these incredibly creative formations, the twirly bird stuff in the
Right.
backfield. All of a sudden you've got a 4-by-1 formation on the goal line, empty. And, you just pitch it over to Travis Kelce. It's like these crazy formations, these crazy plays. And one of the things that we always talked about in our run in Denver at back-to-back championships when we started the season 13-0 is the biggest thing we have to avoid is boredom.
Yep.
Because it gets too easy.
Totally. Yep.
And so I think Andy understands that. I think that's one of the reasons that he has tried to keep guys engaged with, like I said, these formations, these trick plays, just to get them excited about it. Because, man, they could sleepwalk, and offensively they can flip the switch and they're just better than you. They are the Globo Gym of the NFL. We're better than you, and we know it. So, like, I think that you'll see a heightened sense of kind of who they are, where they're going, and I think you'll see them. I think you'll see them play exceptionally well. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Cleveland, because I think Cleveland's a really good football team. They're a real physical football team to keep it close, but I think in the end, Kansas City will find a way to kind of pull away toward the end.
Well, look, there's a couple of things here that need to be addressed. First and foremost, let's talk about the bye here significantly or specifically with Andy Reid, right? Mm-hmm. Historically, Andy Reid's teams with a bye are almost impossible to beat. I think Reid is 25-5 in his career coming off a bye week, including the playoffs. That's 6-2 in the postseason. And I think that the Chiefs needed that break more than any other team, because just what you were talking about, I felt like halfway through the season, they know we're good and we know what we want to do, and we just want to effing get there, man. Can we just get there? Can we just get there healthy? I get it. We want to go through the schedule. I think we're going to get there. I think you're going to see the best of them. And then there's a specific matchup problem that is really an issue for Cleveland in this game. Look, I know Chunt, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, they've been incredible. But anytime the Chiefs have played a team with a good running game, it really hasn't been a problem for them. I mean, they played the Baltimore Ravens 3 times under their present construction. They've beat them all 3 times. So the idea of that being a problem for them, I don't see it, because they're okay with, hey, man, take 7 plays and 6 minutes and maybe get a touchdown or kick a field goal. We'll take 3 and get a touchdown. And there are 3 things that I think are really problematic for Cleveland here. Cleveland is 29th in the league in DVOA, in passing to deep plays, 20 yards or more. Hello, Tyreek Hill. They're 29th in the league in DVOA on third down passes. Hello, Travis Kelce. And they're 29th in third down passes. Yeah, third down passes. Hello, Patrick Mahomes. And they're 28th in DVOA against tight end passes. That's Travis Kelce. Look, I get it. I understand it. They want to run the ball. They want to do all this. But the Browns are going to need, in my opinion, the Browns are going to need a start like they had against the Pittsburgh Steelers, with turnovers aplenty, for them to stay in this game for a long time.
Agreed. I think watching the Chiefs and breaking them down, one of the things that they do probably better than anybody else is they get 4 or 5 guys out in the pattern. And the 4 or 5 guys they put out in the pattern, you can't cover.
Correct.
Tyreek Hill, you can't cover. Travis Kelce, you can't cover. Hardman, I mean, that guy can run like the wind, right? They get a running back in Hunt out. You're just in trouble. And so for me, one of the things they do when you watch them, Trey, they're like 5-0 protection, our 5 against your 5. And we believe we can hold up. Now, if we don't hold up, guess what? We got Patrick Mahomes standing back there who's going to scramble around, hold the ball, make a play. And if you give them, I don't care who you are, even against average receivers, if you give them 3.5 seconds, average receivers are going to get open. They've got some of the most prolific receivers in the history of the game. Like, you give Patrick Mahomes 3 seconds, man, you're in deep trouble. And that's kind of how I see the Kansas City Chiefs. Everybody talks about their weapons, and their weapons are exceptional. One of the things they've been able to do is they've been able to find a way to protect their quarterback and get all 5 of those guys out. And they're a nightmare, man. They're just an absolute nightmare.
What do you make of what we saw down the stretch where, for the last few games, really since the Saints game, Tyreek Hill was not a big part of the offense, and you heard people say, oh, they're figuring out how to take away the deep ball from the Kansas City Chiefs. When I hear that, I had to laugh a little bit because if you could figure it out, you would have done it by now. And he wouldn't have all those he has the most 20-plus yard receptions since 2018 or 2019. I can't remember what the year is. So I honestly, look, I could be 100% wrong, and is it possible that they could come out and be flat? Like, again, we talked about the Packers of 2011. I guess so, but I just don't see how that plays out logically.
Yeah, I honestly don't either. I mean, they may be a little rusty early, but they've got so many weapons in Kansas City, and they're so multiple. And, ultimately their quarterback off schedule can just make things happen. And that's what really puts them in the, in the driver's seat, if you will. And listen, Cleveland's a damn good football team.
They are a very good team.
Right. If you look at Baker Mayfield early in the season, it's like 160 yards, 150 yards, 201 yards, 160, 182, 96, 220 yards. And recently, man, there's been a lot more of him, eviscerating people, and they have grown. That offense has grown. Their O-line is they're dominant performers. They flat back guys. They really capture the line of scrimmage on a consistent basis, which all that stuff is great. But like you said, if you're eating up 8 minutes of clock and settling on a field goal, and they go a minute 32 and score a touchdown, you scrap pile that. You're right. like teams just get away from the advantage they have. And that's what makes Kansas City so tough, is they can score in bunches, in droves, and they can do it with almost zero time eaten up on the clock. That's what makes them so hard to contend with.
Yeah, I just think they're going to have to win. Cleveland's going to have to win the turnover battle by a substantial margin for this to be a win for them. And I know Patrick Mahomes throws a lot of interceptions that are dropped or not called. Well, a lot of those he throws on a free play. Like, oh, what about that pick off there? Okay, well, he knew it was an offside, so he had a free play. That's why he makes that throw. So if you want to do that, that's fine. Just look at it realistically and not unrealistically. So I think we're both picking Kansas City here, right?
Yeah, both taking Kansas City, yes.
And that leads us to the geezer game, which is the Bucs and the Saints. And it just really struck me when I was just thinking about it, because Breeze turned 42 on Friday. The combined age of the quarterbacks in this game is 85 years and 5 months. That's an insane thing. And, this is the matchup of the most regular season games started by both quarterbacks ever in NFL history by a substantial margin. In fact, Brady's in all of the top four. It's Brady versus Breeze, Brady versus Manning, Brady versus Rivers. And there was another one. I think it's either Rodgers or another one with Manning. But the point is, it's always Tom Brady. And now we have a guy who's just a year younger than him. For a whole generation of football fans, that makes no sense, right? That the age of the quarterback, the two quarterbacks, is 85? 85!
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's incredible to see both these guys and the way they're playing. And, in this, they're just both supreme field generals, but they both still have an incredible skill set. It's not like they're just hanging on by the skin of their teeth. Like, we've seen some dudes, play deep into kind of the age thing and not play very well, but Correct. These guys are still playing incredibly well. And it's a fascinating matchup, man. It's fascinating that you could play into this advanced age and play that well. And, having covered both of these teams and done multiple Saints games and multiple Tampa games, I think one of the things that we tend to almost take for granted is watching these guys play and watching the production they have, just how much the people in their organizations, I'm just going to say, revere them and how good they are, especially with younger guys and nurturing guys and bringing guys along and allowing themselves to be coached. In turn, everybody gets to be coached. There is no virgin meat on anybody's ass over there. Drew Brees or Tom Brady, they allow their coaches to get after them, and that allows that organization to get after anybody. And I think it's one of the gifts that they have brought to their organizations is they're just like, man, I just want to be as good as I can be. And if that means I'm getting my ass chewed, I'll get my ass chewed. And it's that ancillary kind of just coverage of the whole team that says, all right, this is the way it is. If we want to be great, we have to be coached as well. And it's an incredible statement on who they are to be able to accept that at this advanced stage with all the success they've had.
So then you look at what's already happened this season. They've played twice, and the Saints have beaten them twice. And the last time, they absolutely thumped them. They started week 1. They got a pick 6 off Brady. And then Brady and the Bucs were playing really well towards the middle of the season. And the Saints went down to Tampa. I mean, they just body bagged them. I mean, they destroyed them in that game. And the idea of beating a team 3 times in one season, it's not really a thing. Like the last 3 times it's presented itself, the team has pulled off the trifecta. But I think the now is more important than the statistical facts here, because if you look at the way, and you had one of his games, albeit it was against a Detroit team that seemed rather not interested in participation at times, the way Brady and the Bucs are playing, as opposed to the way the Saints sort of got across the finish line, I don't think those first 2 victories mean as much.
Yeah. Well, I think there's several things. One, Gronkowski is a much better player than he was in the first 10 weeks of the season. Like he's gotten his legs underneath him, both in the blocking aspect of the game and the receiving. They didn't have Antonio Brown in those 2 games.
Yep.
And Antonio Brown, I mean, you can say what you want about Antonio Brown, and you know he can be a legendary turd, but that dude can play. And he is playing well, and he seems to have accepted the responsibility of his actions. And, you know, Bruce Arians has told me flat out, he knows he screws up. He does one thing that's not team oriented, and he's gone. That's the deal we have. And so he's been exceptional. I'm with you, man. They're playing really well. I tell you the one thing, like offensively, they are in a rhythm. Brady, that kind of unspoken language between he and his receivers, you know, that the nonverbal communication has really advanced, and you can see that on a week-to-week basis. But here's the thing, is that they have been dominated at the line of scrimmage in those 2 matchups. And it's the Saints defensive line. It is Cam Jordan on one side, and believe it or not, it's Trey Hendrickson. Who had 13 and a half sacks. But for whatever reason, you know, people always ask me, like, hey, when you're, you know, during your time in the NFL, who were the guys that you really struggled with blocking? And it's none of the guys you think. You know, I'd line up against Cortez or Warren Sapp or, you know, guys. It was none of those guys, although they were a huge challenge. Don't get me wrong. Phil Hansen used to wear my ass out. Pierce Holt used to wear my ass out. It was a bad matchup. Donovan Smith has not yet blocked Trey Hendrickson.
Yep.
And it's been a real issue in their first 2 previous matchups. And then, you know, Cam Jordan's just a great player. David Onyemata on the inside has been unblockable for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at times. So that's the matchup within the matchup where Tampa has really struggled. And they're playing a lot better right now. But that to me has been kind of the one issue. And then on the flip side of that, Armstead is he's an unbelievable player, as is Ramczyk on the other side. And they've been able to neutralize Shaq Barrett and JPP. That's been, to me, that's been the big difference. Not that they're going to run it down your throat or anything like that on offense, but they're going to be able to protect Drew Brees on the edges and let him get the ball out of his hand. Yeah.
So then the question becomes, when you're looking at the game, what do you trust? What you just said and what you've seen over 2 matchups and how that has been a real problem, the matchup inside the matchup, or do you trust how both teams are playing right now? Because look, I get it. The Bears defense was incredible, and they deserve better this year from the effort that they put forth and what they got on the offensive side of the ball. But the Saints offense hasn't been right for a while. And Mike Evans is still not Mike Evans. And I don't know if he's going to be. And if he's not going to be Mike Evans, how problematic is that for a Tampa Bay team that is clearly cresting right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big matchup, right? I mean, Mike Evans is just a guy, even if he's not catching a lot of balls, that's a dude that you have to contend with. That's a dude that you have to roll coverage to, that you have to find a way to double as often as possible. He's a nightmare. And so if he's not right, that certainly is an advantage.
I was talking about Mike Thomas too. You know, he hasn't been right all year either.
Yeah, Mike Thomas hasn't been as well. I tell you that, like, if push comes to shove for me, I'm going to trust not that it's the previous two matchups, but I'm just going to trust who has dominated the line of scrimmage in those previous two matchups, because that hasn't changed much. Yeah. And that's been the New Orleans Saints. And so I will take the fact that I think New Orleans matches up better across the line of scrimmage, buys more time for their quarterback, and buys more time for their receivers because of that, and also puts more pressure on the opponent's quarterback. So that's what I'm going to trust. Even though Tampa is peaking offensively right now in their passing game, I'm just going to trust the two lines of scrimmage being won by New Orleans, and that's enough for them to win this game.
Yeah, I hear you, and you're probably right, and I'm probably buying the candy instead of the steak, which is what you're talking about. Candy looks really good right now.
Yeah.
Like the candy, the sizzle looks good. I have no idea if the steak is tough or not, but the sizzle looks fantastic. So,
well, let me just lay this on you. Quinn my granddaughter took the Bucs.
Okay.
And I had said that I thought that Patrick Mahomes was a unicorn. And she said, well, what's that mean? And I go, a unicorn. She goes, yeah, but what does that mean? And I go, he's magical. He's like a unicorn. She goes, oh. I go, okay, let's go to the next game, Quinn. Bucs at Saints. And she goes, well, Tom Brady's a unicorn. He's even more magicer than she goes, he's even more magicer than Patrick Mahomes. So I'll take the Bucs. So, I mean, the Quinn is with you, my friend.
Well, listen, I feel a lot better about this, knowing those facts. So I actually, of all the picks we've made over the first two rounds of the playoffs, this is the one game we've disagreed on. So we'll see how that plays out. So the most important thing now is to figure out which ridiculous picture I'm going to pick out to make sure I put this on social so people will pay attention to it. And we'll figure out whether I and Quinn are right, or whether you and your wisdom about the steak and the inside will be right in this matchup as well. Hey, enjoy the games, and we'll chop it up on Monday, okay?
Sounds good, my friend.
All right, see you, buddy.